Hi, this is just a quick video to show you how you can increase your rendering speed when you use the Leia provided template for Blender, the camera rig in Blender to generate Lightfield content. Now, I've made a video on this before just to show you how you can generate Lightfield content in Blender for the Lume Pad. This video is purely just to show you how you can increase that rendering speed. If you remember, it took me over 5 hours, and I've got the video playing right now of that section in that video to render the example that I was working on in that video. And with this technique that I'll be showing you, you can bring that down to about 1.5 hours. So hopefully you'll benefit from that. You know, it'll make a difference if you make longer videos. Like if you were to make a minute's worth of video, that would take you over a day to render. But with this technique, it brings it down to a matter of hours. So you get about a 3-fold increase in rendering speed. It doesn't come without a cost. So it does impact the quality of your 2D view, but only your 2D view. Your 4V view is still intact. It is not impacting the quality of that. And that's really the view that we're interested in, isn't it? So let me show you why that is first, and then we'll jump straight into how you configure for this method of increasing your rendering speed. Hope it's useful to you. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens when we use this template straight out of the box without making any modifications. Blender renders each of our views separately and then joins them together to make a frame. Each of the frames contains all 4 views in this arrangement. Now, if we place that onto the Lume Pad and look at it on the screen, and we look at that in our 2D mode, only frame number 1 is used. So let's bring frame number 1 across onto the screen. And as you can see, frame number 1 is smaller than the resolution of the screen, so there is going to be some upscaling. Now let's have a look at what happens in our 4-view mode. In our 4-view mode, we actually have 16 views. We're only taking advantage of 4 of those views. The vertical direction also has 4 views, but we're basically not using those. We're only using the views in the horizontal direction. So let's just restore our frame for that. And in this case, we are going to use all 4 of those views. But as you can see now, the views are actually larger than each of the views on the display on the Lume Pad. Each view on the Lume Pad has a resolution of 640 by 400. So we have to do some downscaling. And now that's okay. It doesn't impact what we view, but it is overkill as far as the rendering that we've performed. We've basically rendered at a higher resolution than what is required for the Lume Pad, and that obviously has an impact on rendering time. Now we can take those 4 views once they've been downscaled, and we place them onto the display. They're also then duplicated across in the vertical direction to produce the rest of the views. Okay, now what if we were to take those 4 views and we were to render them not at a higher resolution, but actually at the 640 by 400 resolution as required for the 4-view mode? That's actually what we're going to do as part of this exercise. That's how we're going to get our speed improvement for the render. Now again, they're going to be rendered at this resolution, and each frame is going to be stitched together, and that then allows us to view it on the Lume Pad. Now let's have a look at what happens in the 2D mode with that. Again, we're going to take frame number 1, not frame number 1, we're going to take the first view. And that first view is going to be placed onto the display, and again it is going to be upscaled, but as you can see it's going to need a little bit more upscaling than previously because it is a smaller size now. If we now scale it up, it's not going to look as good. It should look more like something like this. But it will actually be something more like this. Now it's not actually going to look like this. I've exaggerated this a little bit just to make the point, but it is not going to quite have the same fidelity as a higher resolution would. Now, of course, in your 4-view mode, it is going to be perfect. It's going to have the right resolution from the word go. It is going to split those up. It is going to place them onto your display and duplicate them across as before. So now let's have a look at how we actually go about doing this. Okay, so here we are in our project. On the left-hand side here, you can see the camera rig. Here you can see the view of the objects through the camera rig. Let's just also show you the whole rig together with the objects. And if you would have watched my other video on producing objects for the Lume Pad in Blender, you would have seen this before. Okay, so what we want to do is quite simple. Go to the output properties and simply change the resolution. So here, change this to 1280 on the X resolution, and on the Y resolution, change that to 800. Okay, so we've basically halved the resolution on each of the axes, producing an overall reduction of 4 times. So it's a quarter of the resolution of what the original rig had. Ensure as you do that, by the way, that you are in your main scene. Don't do this in any of the other scenes. Once you have done that, there is another thing that we need to do, otherwise this doesn't quite render correctly. The position of each of the 4 views would still be incorrect. The stitching of those together, we need to basically specify, now that we've changed the resolution, how they get stitched together. Just to show you that they're not actually correctly stitched together at this stage, let's do a render. Let's do a render, and you will see it's doing each of the views. And now when it stitches them together, you can see that it's not centering them. It's only showing a part of the objects, and the rest of the views are outside of the frame of our render. So to fix that, let's go into compositing, and you will see here how this is rendered together. You'll see that there is a render layer for each of the camera. So there's camera A and camera B and so forth. That is then fed into a denoiser, and that's just to take the grain away from your render. And that is fed into a 4-view compositor. That's a compositor that Leia have designed. And it takes as an input all 4 of those cameras. And then it just takes those into the normal outputs. Let's have a look inside this 4-view compositor, because we're going to have to make the changes for that alignment in here. You can see that the inputs, the 4 cameras, feed into a scale node, and that scale node reduces the inputs by 5, so the images are shrunk, and then they are positioned. And what we're going to do is fix the positioning, and because we've reduced the resolution to half, we also then need to change the position to half. So whenever you see a number here, just divide it by 2. So we'll go from, and I'll make this a little bit larger so that we can see this. This is negative 640, so that now needs to be negative 320. We'll change that to 200. We'll change that to 320. That to 200. and this to negative 320, and this to negative 200. And as you can see in the back drop, things are getting fixed. So 320 here, and negative 200, and things are getting much more centered now. Okay, so that has produced our fix. So with that, let us now go and render again. I am going to start the render right here. And hopefully you can see that we are actually rendering faster. So at the beginning of the video, the render speed that you would have seen, it's visibly faster. And in my actual timings of this, as I said, my original render without any of these modifications took over 5 hours. And with this modification, it now takes 1.5 hours. Okay, so there is some other things you can do to improve rendering other than what I've just been discussing. The technique that or the method that I've just gone through produces an improvement of about 3 times the rendering speed. I have achieved improvements in the order of 25 times the rendering speed by doing things in addition to that. So I'm still using this technique, but I'm also doing some scripting. I'm also using some tools outside of Blender. Now I can go through that. It's obviously a lot more involved if there is interest. So do let me know if this has been of any help to you, and if you are interested in further improving your render speeds for your needs. With that, thank you for watching my video, and God bless.